On July 6, 1960, American college professor Charles Hapgood received letters from the chief of a U.S. Air Force cartography unit stationed at Westover Air Force Base. The letter said that the Piri Reis map mentioned had been consulted, and the coastline in the lower part of the map was very consistent with coastline of Antarctica, detected by the Norwegian-British-Swedish Antarctic expedition that took place from 1949 to 1952. What is the Piri Reis map mentioned here? It was drawn by Piri Reis, who was an Ottoman admiral and cartographer. He participated in many naval battles, was very familiar with the topography of the Mediterranean, and he was also a master at drawing maps. The Piri Reis map is a world map compiled in 1513, when the Age of Discovery had only just begun. Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan's circuit of the globe was in 1519, so this map was drawn even before then. The world seas were quite unfamiliar to humans, but this 1513 map miraculously and accurately reflected the Antarctic coastline that is still hundreds of meters, even thousands of meters below the ice. Isn't that pretty magical? So, when was Antarctica first located? It was discovered in 1820, so Piri Reis himself could not have been to the South Pole. The landforms below the Antarctic ice were not even surveyed until 1958, so there is only one explanation for the Piri Reis map. That is, it comes from ancient survey data. Piri Reis's own illustrations on the map are telling. He drew this map based on a collection of more than 20 ancient maps, but a large part of the original image has been lost. What remains now shows the southwest coastline of Africa and the southeastern coastline of South America. These places are all clear and not much of a problem, but the most confusing part is the lower part of the map. No one knows where this place is, and it doesn't match any coastline on Earth today. The protagonist of today's story, Professor Hapgood, is an expert on ancient maps and a geologist. He published The Earth's Shifting Crust in 1958, and the book included a foreword by Albert Einstein. Hapgood's research concluded that this unknown coastline looks a lot like Princess Martha Coast, a portion of the coast of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica. But now, it is covered with ice up to 1,600 meters thick. He was incredibly confused by this, so he asked the commander of the U.S. Air Force Cartography Department to write back to him, which was the letter we mentioned at the beginning. It was confirmed that it was indeed quite consistent with the Antarctic coastline under the ice sheet known by the survey, which confirmed Professor Hapgood's idea. The letter was like a bomb, blowing up and prompting countless questions. If this Piri Reis map depicts the topography of Antarctica before freezing, and Piri Reis is not the original author of this map, when was the original map drawn? Who drew it? To talk about how disruptive this matter is to our existing knowledge, it is necessary to ask, when did the glaciers in Antarctica form? The prevailing academic view is that ice sheets began to expand on the Antarctic continent around 23 million years ago. By about 15 million years ago, Antarctica was basically covered by glaciers, forming what we see today. However, some recent studies have proposed very bold and different ideas. The researchers believe that the freezing of Antarctica didn't happen all at once, but gradually. As for what we see today, it may have been completed 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, which is very close to modern times. Professor Hapgood also believes that Antarctica was originally not where it is now, but a warmer place about 3,600 kilometers north. It got to where it is today because of the shifting of the Earth's crust. Albert Einstein believed that the displacement of Antarctica's crust is due to the centrifugal force generated by the Earth's rotation and the uneven effect of glacial deposition. In other words, the more Antarctica moves closer to the southern tip of the Earth, the closer it gets to being frozen. As for the drifting process, how many meters or tens of centimeters does the land travel per year? Or was it pushed to the current position in a very short period of time by a powerful force that we are not aware of yet? Now, I am going to introduce a theory called cataclysmic pole shift hypothesis. Professor Hapgood believes that there is the possibility of rapid movement of the Earth's crust. This theory is not the same as the familiar continental drift. That drift speed, in human senses, is extremely slow. Hapgood's crust is likened to the peel of an orange that wraps the inner structure of the Earth. If you think about it, the orange peel and pulp are not completely attached, but connected by some fibers. If you apply enough force, peel and pulp will separate. Under the action of the centrifugal force of the Earth's rotation building up, and under the action of the extremely uneven distribution of glaciers, the crust's internal force accumulates to a certain point. Coupled with an immensely powerful external triggering condition, such as a comet hitting the Earth, the entire crust will undergo a huge displacement in a very short period of time. It's like the connection between the peel and the pulp of the orange fiber is being broken, but rather than continental drift, as we usually understand it, it's the overall displacement of the crust. This kind of crustal shift would create a huge disaster for the world. There would be huge floods, tsunamis, volcanoes, earthquakes, and further disasters like electromagnetic storms would follow. So, can this theory be confirmed? Not confirmed on Earth. However, in March 2016, Nature published an article. A research team had observed that the entire crust has shifted on Mars. This could be the cause of the Martian catastrophe. Therefore, some people speculate that the coastline of Queen Maud land in Antarctica from 13,000 BC to 4000 BC was likely to be suitable for human habitation. This claim has also been confirmed by experiments. Because the Piri Reis map corresponds to the Ross Sea in today's Antarctica, this part has no ice caps, just a layer of ice floes several hundred meters thick. Not only that, researchers at the Carnegie Institution of Washington used the ionium-thorium dating method to detect sediments in the Ross Sea, proving that the earliest glacial sediments in the Ross Sea only appeared in 4000 BC. In other words, the last piece of ice that seals Antarctica may have formed less than 6,000 years ago. However, this brings up a new problem. Our human civilization, from the earliest it's been traced back to summer in ancient Egypt to the present, is about 6,000 years. The Chinese consider their civilization to be 5,000 years old. The Indus Valley civilization may be earlier, but generally the furthest time frame is around 6,000 years ago. To ask primitive people 6,000 years ago to measure latitude and longitude and then draw accurate land coastlines seems so unrealistic. In fact, maps of the ancient coastline of Antarctica are not just limited to the Piri Reis map. There are several others. The French mathematician and cartographer Unveil painted a heart-shaped map in 1531. The shape of Antarctica on this map is remarkably similar to today's map, and the location is already in the current polar region. But there are many independent mountains and rivers in the part of the coastline of Antarctica on the map. The interior is blank, with no details of mountains or rivers marked, meaning we can speculate that this map was drawn when the ice and snow were about to freeze the entire Antarctic continent. At that point in time, the interior of the continent would have been frozen, with the coastal areas still suitable for human habitation based on the mountains and rivers marked. Professor Hapgood and Richard Strachan, PhD, from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, analyzed Unveil's map. They believed that the map was a synthesis of older maps. Like the Piri Reis map, it described the coastline of Antarctica, which is quite consistent with the results of the modern survey. Another ancient map of Antarctica was drawn by 16th century Belgian geographer, cosmographer, and cartographer Gerardus Mercator in 1569. Mercator is quite famous because he invented the Mercator projection. This is one of the standard methods of drawing maps, still in use today. In the world map drawn by Mercator, Antarctica and the location on the heart-shaped map are the same, but it has no mountains and rivers near the coastline. So it seems that the original reference map used by Mercator was later in time than Unveil's heart-shaped map. The last map was created by the 18th century French geographer Philippe Puech, known for inventing a new system of geography and popularizing this field. Completed in 1737, Antarctica was completely snow-free on that map, with a huge river dividing Antarctica into eastern and western parts. It can be speculated that among the several ancient maps of Antarctica we have mentioned, this one has an original reference map that is older than the others. At that time, Antarctica was completely unfrozen. As we all know, when a map is drawn, it has north-south latitude and east-west longitude. Latitude can be easily solved by observing constellations and the position of the sun. But how to find the longitude has always been a problem. It was not until the 18th century, when English carpenter and clockmaker John Harrison invented the chronometer, that the longitude of the map could be accurately drawn and the precision of maps was greatly improved. However, in the 4 pictures of the ancient Antarctic that we mentioned today, the relative longitudes all have incredibly true levels. The Piri Reis map has only a 0.1 degree deviation in the location of Africa and South America. This data also takes into account the errors introduced by Piri Reis in the process of reproducing the map. That is, the person who copied the map did not do as well as the author of the original map. The longitude of the original map should be more accurate. Next, it's time to ask questions. Who accumulated this ancient knowledge? These people must have had a fairly high level of knowledge in mathematics, surveying, geography, and even aerial mapping to be able to draw these accurate maps. Moreover, their maps cover a considerable time span, from Antarctica, not covered by ice and snow at all, to the beginnings of ice and snow leaving only the coastline habitable, and finally Antarctica, completely covered by ice and snow. In other words, the original authors of these maps must have lived in a prehistoric civilization with advanced technological means. The knowledge presented by the maps we are talking about challenges the understanding of human civilization today. The field of anthropology currently believes that the existence of human civilization is about 6,000 years. At that time, humans were still in the Stone Age, wearing animal skins, living in shacks and caves, and hunting for a living. How can you draw an accurate map of Antarctica's coastline if you can't even figure out places beyond your habitual activity area? As I'm sure you have noticed, there is a very mysterious timing coincidence. When the Antarctic continent was completely frozen around 4000 BC, that was about the time when our human civilization started. In ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Indus Valley, and China, the beginning of civilization is all estimated to be 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. If we make a bolder speculation here, was it around that time that human civilization experienced a big fault? Did earlier humans develop advanced knowledge, and then shortly after the prehistoric humans left the last accurate map of the Antarctic coastline due to some external force, human beings suffered a global catastrophe? The developed knowledge also would have gone extinct. Eventually, we see civilizations re-emerge from Nile of ancient Egypt, Euphrates and Tigris in the Middle East, Indus River of Asia, Yellow River in China, and so on. However, this time they appeared from scratch, in the most primitive state. During the Holocene glacial retreat about 7,000 years ago, the world suddenly warmed, resulting in rapid melting of the remaining ice sheets of North America and Europe and a global flood. According to today's calculations, the last time Antarctica froze was about 6,000 years ago, shortly after the Great Flood 7,000 years ago. Is this possible? With the sudden displacement of Antarctica's crust, it moved to its current location, was frozen in ice, and absorbed a large amount of seawater. Glaciers formed, allowing the global flood to recede. The people who survived the flood disaster descended from the mountains they fled to, and were able to return to the plains. With little memory of past civilizations, farming life had to begin again, developing our civilization today. The origin of our modern civilization is roughly close to the time when Antarctica was finally frozen again. Is this just a coincidence? Finally, I want to finish today's episode with a line from Galadriel from the movie The Lord of the Rings. She said,
"And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend, legend became myth, and for 2,500 years, the ring passed out of all knowledge,